So it seems like these days, any business that has the word AI in their name, it goes to the moon. When I talk about Tempest AI, SoundHound, C3 AI, and of course, BigBear.AI, ticker symbol BABY. My goodness gracious, take a look at this. Year to date, right now they're up by 88%. But what's more magnificent than that is their 1 month total return is almost triple digits, almost 100%. It's crazy to see. In the past 1 year, this is a really volatile stock. It goes up very high, it goes down very low, and back in February, it even reached a high of almost $10 a share. So today we're going to be doing a stock analysis on BigBear.AI, and between you and me, we might as well call this Big Bull AI because in the past 1 year, we're talking about positive 400%. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And before we get into the technical analysis of my game plan with BigBear, let's talk about their business overview. So unlike the competition in the AI space, BigBear is not necessarily a startup. They've been around since 1988, which is around the year that I was born, with ProModel Corporation, a company that they just acquired, which means their history is now BigBear's history. And back then, they sold simulation software for warehouses and factories that were operating in Pennsylvania. That way, they could test their production facilities to estimate an output and see how optimized their supply chain really is. These days, their business model is a little more different and they've evolved because now they do biometrics and identity analysis. And with the acquisition of ProModel Corporation, they still do the supply chain simulation model for CapEx or hypothetical layouts like, can I get this product manufactured faster by doing this or that? And they also have several AI battlefield tactics models that generals and admirals will use for decision making of their troops, brigades, and naval fleet. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. What's really exciting about BigBear is that their facial recognition technology is being deployed at major border checkpoints. This plays into the big beautiful bill that was just passed and the funding that's going to be pouring into the Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and ICE. So to sum it up, BigBear takes messy and chaotic real-world data and turns it into a digestible form that people can use to make decisions, either on the battlefield or in airports or even in a logistics factory. So their product and service is decision intelligence through AI. Now let's talk about the exciting stuff that's happening with BigBear. Very recently, as you can see on your screen right now, in January of 2025, BigBear appointed Kevin McLennan as CEO. Dude, that's a freaking Irish name if I've ever heard one before. And on surface level, he might seem like just another CEO. But if you take a look at his background, my goodness gracious, I think the future for BigBear pretty exciting and pretty promising because he used to be, upon further review on his Wikipedia page, he used to be the Homeland Security Secretary under President Trump in his last presidential term, but he also used to be the Commissioner of the Customs and Border Protection under President Trump as well. So I think that connection to the Trump administration, you know how he treats people that are loyal to him, I feel like that's going to be very bullish for BigBear going forward, despite the fact that he didn't really spend that much time in his roles because he wanted to pursue the private business world. But still, I think his connection to President Trump is still very evident because President Trump has been ramping up his efforts and his spending towards Customs and Border Protection and Homeland Security. Those are two realms that he is just pouring the money into. And believe it or not, as we're about to find out, BigBear is operating in those two spaces to help them do their jobs more efficiently. This is straight from their 10K. Their customers and how they make revenue. Of course, the software as a service company that utilizes AI. So it includes the US military and intelligence agencies like the FBI, the CIA, all of those three-letter agencies that are headquartered in Northern Virginia, border protection, transportation security, manufacturing, and if you turn your eyes to the bottom of the screen, a significant portion of their revenue is from contracts with the public sector agencies. So Trump has been slashing the funding for federal government employees reason. Rather, they're spending the big bucks on the businesses that operate on the outside of the government structures, like General Dynamics, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Huntington Ingalls, Palantir, Big Bear. Speaking of which, not too long ago, Big Bear and Palantir, if you know anything about Palantir, they utilize data analytics in order to find people, but more importantly, their stock performance in the past 3 years, nothing short of magnificent, a compounder. And to see that Big Bear, who seems to be in the same line of business as Palantir, partnering up, I feel like the future of Big Bear, like their stock price movement, plus the trajectory of their company, will it pan out the same as Palantir? I guess only time will tell, because that was announced back in November of 2021. So it's been 4 years since the fact. And I'm gonna give credit where credit is due, because in 2025, Big Bear has been ramping up their contracts with the federal government. I think during the Biden administration, it was pretty quiet and down low, but my goodness, has this year been lucrative for them. Because as you can see on your screen right now, they just won a contract with the Department of Defense, aka the Department of War, aka the military, for their Vane prototype. What is Vane? Think of it as a counterintelligence program that scans and analyzes social media and news for propaganda and hidden messages and organized soft attacks from countries like Russia. Believe it or not, next time you argue with someone on Instagram or YouTube in the comments section, you most likely are communicating with an AI bot that's planted there by a country with a political motive, especially if it's during our electoral season. And not only that, Big Bear is partnering up with SoftPoint for their facial recognition technology in Pangeum. SoftPoint Pay's integration of BigBear.AI biometrics will provide businesses with advanced capabilities to enhance security, streamline operations, and elevate customer satisfaction in payment experiences. If you've ever been to a retail store before and you opt to go into the self-checkout aisle, there's a camera that points right at you dead center, right, to make sure that you don't steal, but also it's recording to log your data of what your face looks like, so that in the future, if you are the type of person to scan this but not scan this and slip it into the bag, they're gonna log all that information about you. And as we learned during the pandemic in 2021 and 2022, dude, loss prevention and theft, especially for the big box retailers like Target, Sam's Club, and Walmart, has been a huge headache. So I think this technology is only gonna become more crucial and essential going forward, because more and more people have sticky fingers and they're stealing. And this contract right here is absolutely huge. BigBear.AI is awarded the contract to modernize the critical Department of Defense Force Management Platform, aka also known as Orion. I would even go as far as to say that their big catalyst right now is this platform Orion. What is Orion? You can think of it as a battlefield management software. It knows where every single unit, missile, aircraft, and ship, anything in your fleet or weapons arsenal are located. And with that information, this software can run simulations or exercise playthroughs. And it even ranks the most recommended course of action based on a risk-reward analysis. Just think about how valuable that technology is going to be for the chief of staff, the generals, and everybody else that's operating in the military space. Not just the United States, but for our allies as well. Such as right now, a real growing threat is the possibility of Taiwan becoming a part of China. So are you going to call me crazy and a racist if I say that the United States military is probably prepping and they're training for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan with Orion? That way they're not caught off guard with their pants down to their ankles. I am sure and I am certain that the Pacific Theater is prepping for this scenario. Whether or not it's going to play out, they're going to be training and preparing. And remember how we talked about their biometrics and identity analysis earlier? Well, as of June 17th, they are now operating and are partnered with some of the biggest airports in the United States to make sure that immigration and customs processing can be more efficient. They can look right into your eyes through their little camera and know everything there is to know about you, such as you're the type of guy to sit down to urinate. But jokes aside, they're probably going to use this technology in order to prevent infiltration of people that have secret identities from coming into the US, to reduce the amount of birth tourism, and to make the overall flying experience a little more safer for everyone that's involved. And just a few days ago, Big Bear had a pretty big announcement that their Vane technology was utilized in the Project Convergence Capstone 5, also known as the PCC5. And through this software, the US and its allies, including Australia, Canada, France, Japan, New Zealand, UK, and all the other branches of the United States military, they were able to forecast models, accurate sentiment analysis for detecting adversarial narratives. Remember how we talked about that earlier? They're trying to stop the Russian and Chinese scam bots. And because of Vane, they were able to learn about potential cyber attacks before it even happens through this exercise with our partners. What I see here is that right now, the US is the only one that's paying for Vane. But our allies just learned about how efficient and good this software is. So, if I were to guess, make an educated guess, I am going to assume that at least half of these countries are going to eventually sign a contract with Vane once they learn how important it is to keep your social media, especially in your country, protected from threats. So if you're following my train of thought, more contracts mean more revenue potential for Big Bear. Can we just refer to them as the Big Bull AI? So as you can see, there's a lot of exciting things that are happening with Big Bull, especially in the past 6 months. However, what I'm trying to say is a company that is up by 400% in the past 365 days, do their numbers follow suit? Like, does it look like a company that is 4xing in 1 year? Well, take a look at this, right? Their revenue for Q1 of 2025, it went up by 5% year over year from Q1 2024, $33 million to $34.8 million. That's it, a 5% increase. That's my first red flag, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what the heck? That's it? And their R&D, the research and development to build out new technology, new software, and to make adjustments to their current software to meet the needs of their clients, well, it's going from 1.1 million to 4.2 million, which is an increase of 264%. For a SaaS company, a software as a service, their R&D is the equivalent of CapEx for a normal company, capital expenditure. When they build out factories and warehouses for like General Mills or Flowers Foods, in the same vein, for a software company, R&D is basically the same thing. They're future-proofing their business by building out better and enhanced and improved new versions of their software, if that makes sense. And something that I do want to call out is, this is a company that is not profitable yet. However, year over year, as you can see by the trend, we'll take a closer look at their financial statements later, but they're going from really deep into the red to a little lesser deep into the red, but they're still in the red with their bottom line, their net income. But a positive call out for Big Bull is that their backlog of contracts, money that's going to be pouring into them once they fulfill their end of the bargain, is growing 30% year over year. It's going from a little less than $300 million to $385 million on the backlog, especially for a company that does business with the DoD. The backlog is an important metric to take into account. Now, I usually don't go over the technical analysis for the companies that I cover on this channel because I'm a value and a dividend growth investor. But when it comes to Big Bull, dude, this is a growth speculative stock. So I think a technical analysis is the least that we can do. And I will say this. Every single indicator says that there is a bullish sentiment about this company. They are going up on a rocket ship. Their RSI right now, the relative strength index, is an 80 to an 85, depending on if you tweak the numbers a little bit. That means there's a lot of momentum, and the trading volume is absolutely absurd. Right now, it's the top 5 most actively traded stocks in the market, right next to Nvidia. Friends and family, I don't think you understand what I just said. An RSI of an 80, that means you're into the overbought territory. More buyers than sellers because there is a bullish sentiment about Big Bull. So if you're trying to short this company right now, dude, you might be screwed. That's not financial advice, but based on what I am seeing, there's a lot more cash that's piling in than cash that's leaving. That doesn't necessarily mean that Big Bull is a good company. It just means a lot of cash is piling into them right now. And something that's pretty crazy is, as we scroll in to take a look at their line of resistance, right now, they smashed past it. Right? I think it was around like 745, and the end of the day at around, what is this, 780. And if I were to make an educated guess, I think the next line of resistance for them will be the exact same one that they had back in February when they went from roughly $3.88 a share to that of about $10.28 a share, because the line of resistance back then was $10.36. The following days and weeks, they just went on a massive sell-off, even before the April sell-off with the rest of the stock market. And I think in April, they reached an absolute low of about, roughly $2 a share. But since then, it's just been rallying and hitting their line of resistance and then bouncing back down to their moving average and then bouncing back up, hitting their line of resistance. And it's been doing that game for about, from April all the way to now. And as you can see, if we zoom in, they have just smashed past that line of resistance. That means, dude, the floodgates have opened, and the highs, we don't know what's going to happen next. It could hit $8.50. It could even hit $9 by the end of the week. However, based on the RSI being in the 80 territory, some pullback might happen as well. And this is another crazy fact. I put this in my notes. They are currently 123% above their 200-day moving average price. So no doubt about it on my mind, I think Big Bear is the hottest thing on the block right now, and there's a ton of momentum going their way and a lot of hype that is pushing into this company. When a company is on the momentum, more money and new money is going to be pouring in as well, because it has the momentum, and emotions drive the market. FOMO is a real thing, the fear of missing out. There's going to be people that are monitoring Big Bear, and they're going to be witnessing it going from $4 back in the 23rd of June to what it is right now of $7.80, and watching it go up by almost 100%. They're going to think like, dude, I need to get on this train before it goes too far. There's people that operate with that type of mindset. But just like the RSI of 80 is telling me that a pullback might happen soon, the 200-day moving average, what I have seen is that when it goes above 100%, usually a correction follows, and it's a very sharp one. It usually goes right off the cliff. So I'm not a genie in a bottle. I don't do tarot cards, and I can't tell the future, but potentially, if Big Bear does hit $9 by the end of the week, a real possibility that could happen, they could sell off all the way back down to about $5 a share. And to be more exact, where this blue line is at about $4.87, but once this hits $9, this blue line is also going to follow suit, and I'm guessing it's going to be like $5 or $5.20. And if the pullback is severe, dude, I'm not going to say that it's not going to hit $3, because it could actually hit $3 a share. And you might be like, dude, why are you being such a bear? No, I'm not being a bear. I'm just telling you the facts. Why could this happen? Because if somebody 2x's or 3x's their money in 2 months or 3 months, especially from options calls, they're going to sell to capitalize and to lock in their gains and their profits, especially for the people that bought into Big Bear during their lows of like $2. Dude, if your money 5x's, are you also not going to sell? But then again, when you think about Palantir and their stock price movement, there's people that regret selling out of them too early, and I'm one of them. I bought into Palantir a few years ago at about $9 a share, and I thought I was a genius when I sold them at about $30 and then $40 a share. I nearly 3x and 4x my money, and I was like, yeah, dude. But had I have just held on, Palantir would have 10x'd my money easily. So on one hand, I think there's going to be a lot of people that sell to lock in their gains, and then there's also going to be a handful of people that are just going to be patient and see this as a long-term investment. But before I tell you what I'm going to do in my game plan with Big Bear, let's talk about where they would fall in the compounder chart. On the left-hand side of your screen, this is going to be the bullish side, the certified compounder, companies and businesses that I believe in, where in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they're going to compound your money. And on the right side of your screen, bearish. This is the CAGR graveyard, the compound annual growth rate graveyard, where your money is only going to grow by 2 or 3% year over year for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Companies that I would avoid. And the list of businesses that you see are the companies that I recently, in the past 1 to 2 months, have covered and analyzed on this YouTube channel so that we can compare compare Big Bear to the competition. And then the ones in the middle is a watch list, wait list. Companies that are neither good or bad, but there are better ways to utilize your capital to grow your money and especially portfolio. So neither bullish or bearish. And the company that I'm most bullish about in the past 2 months that I covered is Oshkosh, an industrial machinery and equipment manufacturer, especially for the Department of Defense. So this is the one that I would trust with my life right now. And the ones all the way to the right, like Chime Finance, Ford Motors, and Carter's Baby Clothes, no thank you. With that said, where would I put Big Bull in the compounder chart? Well, can I get a drum roll? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Big Bear is going to be in the middle. They're on the watch list, wait list. Now, hear me out. I'm personally very bullish about business models that cater towards the military and the Department of Defense because they have renewing and predictable revenue through a backlog and contracts that come pouring in like clockwork. And in my own personal portfolio, some of my best performers are the military stocks. As a matter of fact, if you have not watched my military stocks analysis video, you gotta go and watch it because since I uploaded that video, every single one of them has been crushing it, except for Lockheed Martin, because they lost the contract for the F-47 jets to Boeing. Who the heck would trust Boeing with making aircraft when it seems to fly out of the sky every other week? But enough plugging my own content because it's about Big Bull, right? Big Bull, at the end of the day, it just seems too volatile for my taste buds. The beta on this stock is absolutely bonkers and it's insane. Meaning the volatility of how quickly it just went up in valuation, it could come crashing right back down overnight as well. All that to say, I'm not delusional because there are some people that bought into Big Bear at $2 a share and they 4x their money. So by definition, they are a compounder, right? So Big Bear would be over here in this category. However, there are some people that are still bag holding because they bought into Big Bear when they IPO'd a few years ago, and their cost per share is around $12.50. So for them, they probably see Big Bear as a terrible, terrible investment choice. So I think it really depends on your cost basis per share. If you're able to buy into Big Bear when it's less than like $2 or $3, of course that's a compounder. But if you buy it at its current price point of $8 or even $9, I don't know about that, Chief. Reason being is that their numbers aren't even that great for them to have this valuation. Let's look at their numbers a little closer. So in the past 5 days, they're up by 33%, and their market cap right now is $2.2 billion. However, friends and family, they don't have a trading multiple, a PE ratio, because their net income and their earnings per share is effectively negative. They're in the red. They're unprofitable as a business. So you tell me, a company that is burning cash and is unprofitable to have a market cap of $2.2 billion, it sounds a little expensive. And to prove my point, let's take a look at their top line, their revenue, right? In 2021, they posted $145 million. Okay? And for the trailing 12 months, the past 1 year, now their revenue is $159 million. Does their numbers justify their valuation? I think for me, that's a tough sell. Especially if you look at it visually, it did look pretty impressive, right? From 2018 to 2021, it was growing very aggressively at a double-digit rate year over year. But since 2021, friends and family, their revenue was only growing at a mid-single digit of 6% year over year. And then right here was 0.1%. And in 2024, it was effectively flat. Now we're talking, okay, it's going back into that double digit territory. However, take a look at their net income. This is the bottom line, the profits that are left over after accounting for all of the costs and expenses associated with running a business. And what really confuses me about Big Bear is that back in 2019, they were actually a profitable company. They were in the green by $6 million. But since 2019, their net income has only been getting worse and worse and worse. Trailing 12 months, we're talking about negative $230 million. What is kind of cool though is their SG&A, how much they're paying for their employees. They're like, are they too bloated? Too many employees, human capital, all that jazz? It's going from $97 million back in 2021 to what it is today of $76 million. So at least they're covering that end and they're doing that efficiently. But as we can see from their cash flow statement, they're just burning through the cash because their free cash flow right now is negative $30 million. And it's getting worse and worse from the looks of it, right? From 2019, they used to be in the green. Now they're negative $30 million in the red for their free cash flow. But I will give props where props is due, because in 2021, their stock-based compensation, the RSUs for their employees, was $60 million, and they have been slowly bringing it down, and now it's $23 million. So that I will give credit where credit is due. In contrast, if we compare these numbers, just take a mental snapshot of what Big Bear's numbers look like for their revenue, the top line. If we compare it to Palantir, a very similar company operating in the same space, since 2019, their revenue has been increasing year over year at a double-digit rate. If we look at it visually, this is just predictable, reliable, and a beautiful thing to see. Their numbers back up their valuation. Right now, their market cap is $300 billion, but this type of hyper growth that is consistent for the past 6.5 years, it warrants that valuation because their future is absolutely bright. And as we take a look at their net income, it was just as unprofitable as Big Bear up until 2022. But the difference is they became positive in their free cash flow in 2021. For Big Bear, do we see the path of profitability and being into the green coming to fruition? I don't know about that, because their numbers show us that the trend is going in the other direction. It's going deeper into the red. Whereas for Palantir, we can see them flip the switch in 2021. However, it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to Big Bear, because as we take a look at their balance sheet, I think something that is a positive is their cash and cash equivalents situation. Basically, in 2019, they had only $1 million of cash in their reserves in their wallet. And now, for the trailing 12 months, they do have $107 million. That is good. To be in the green with your cash, it is a good thing. But what is their debt situation? They have $111 million of debt. So after accounting for all of the debt, by utilizing your cash, they would still have $3 million of loans on the books, which I would argue is pretty manageable and is not that devastating. And as a reminder, they do have a backlog of $385 million. So their future revenue does look promising as long as Big Bear is good on their end and they deliver what their clients want. And for my closing remarks, I'll say this about Big Bear. I think right now, at $8 a share, because I have no doubt in my mind they'll probably hit $8 Monday, Tuesday morning. I think they're grossly overvalued for being an unprofitable company. When Palantir was still trading for about $7 or $8 while their net income and their free cash flow was in the green, for me, that's undervalued territory. But for Big Bear, they're in the red for their free cash flow and net income, and for their valuation to balloon like this, it doesn't add up. Now, just for fun, I might buy into Big Bear if they reach $4 a share. Like if there's a pullback and they go right back down to like $4.50 or even $4.25, I might buy one share just to be a part of the Big Bear train. Otherwise, I think I'm going to sit this one out and I will cheer you guys on. If you are invested into Big Bear, I am rooting for you. I hope this works out. But for me and my risk tolerance, it's an unprofitable company. Yes, their future looks bright, but their numbers don't paint a compelling story that they're on the path of profitability, if that makes sense. Before you leave this video, let me know what you think, okay? A company whose revenue was pretty much flat since 2021 to what it is today. Let me know what you think about Big Bear. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? What are you gonna do? What's your play?